Tashi Delek, everybody. Hakar Sang. And welcome to Wednesdays with Rinpoche. So, I hope everybody is doing well. All right. So, today, on our Wednesdays with Rinpoche, so actually, I didn't post any message today on Facebook. So the topic today, actually, I want to discuss here on Wednesday is the continuation of some of the talk that we actually kind of like share last few weeks. And so actually there was a question. So the question, I think some people really wanted to know more on how our mind sees itself, right? Sort of like so, and basically, so it is a question of what is consciousness and what is awareness, and so when we have this question of what is consciousness and what is awareness, and so what is the nature of awareness, sort of like awareness, somehow it is sort of being aware, right? Being aware of something. And so somehow this question, when it comes to what is consciousness, and so there is actually a lot of information, because many times we use the word such as even in Tibetan, like we have many different names for our consciousness. We say Yi, Namshe, number Sheba, like Yi, number Sheba, and Sem, sort of like we use many different kind of like terms. So Yi actually is kind of like mainly what do you call? It's kind of like the heart. So literally, Yi actually means kind of like a heart or essence, and then Nampa Sheba is Namshe, like a conscious, like so it is kind of like a awareness. So literal meaning of Nampa Sheba means awareness, and then Sem literally translated as a mind. And then many times when we actually understand what is mind, then we normally, like even like a physical gesture, when we say mind, it's kind of like we say mind, pointing it to our head. And so we actually look at mind as some sort of like it is somewhere in our brain, like we don't differentiate between brain and mind, sort of like and so many times, like I have so many different mind means kind of like it means I have so many thoughts, right? But in a way, I think there is a difference between thoughts and mind. So when it comes to this question of what is consciousness, what is awareness, and then it is kind of like is it consciousness itself? Is it an object or what? Is it an object? Like when it comes to object and subject, right? It's like when we say I am. So many times, kind of like when we identify who am I. So somewhere I think when we actually ask this question, who am I? And if somebody asks us, who are you? Then we actually take that question sort of like a very, just kind of like we take that very simple question, right? Actually it's a simple question. So even in the like a Buddhist philosophy, and then many religious kind of like a philosophy, when we are actually recognizing who am I, then in the many different tradition, sometime I am just a spirit, or I am a soul, or I am a atma, right? And then even in the Buddhist kind of like a philosophical school, some actually pinpoint when it comes to who am I and what am I, then they came up with this consciousness, right? So it is like I am my own consciousness, and so it's kind of like we actually go into sort of like recognizing when it comes to who am I, then somehow like we actually kind of pinpoint that there is a consciousness like a deep inside that is being aware of everything, right? Sort of like a being aware of everything. And so this awareness or this consciousness, that is kind of like that is the what do you call, the being, that is the kind of like seated in the very deep level of ourself, that is actually seeing everything, right? Seeing kind of like everything. But kind of like when we recognize who am I, then this question also related to the consciousness, because somehow it looks like kind of like we have, right? Sort of like we have in the Buddhist term, like when we actually looking for the self, Buddha actually in many of his teaching, Buddha actually kind of like laid the foundation of different aspect of ourself, right? Different aspect of ourself, sort of like in Buddhist term, we say Pungpo Nga, right? So Pungpo is like 5 aggregates, right? Aggregates, sort of like there are 5 sort of like aggregates. So from a Buddhist term, like Pungpo Nga, 5 aggregates. So 5 aggregates are like the Sugi Pungpo. It is on the surface, we have this physical kind of existence, right? Our physical existence, physical sort of like a physical body, right? The physical layer, the physical layer, sort of like we identify ourselves as okay, this is who I am. Sort of like we have on a physical level, we actually identify ourselves and say, okay, this is who I am, sort of. So we have an image, right, a physical image. So that is actually one layer, one part of us. But that is also sort of like when we actually watch, when we are being aware. So somehow, like kind of like it is just an object, right? It is actually it is not the subject. Our physical layer, our physical part is also not the subject, right? Not the subject. It is a one part of us. It is something that we observe. That is something that we actually see, right? So that is why this is kind of like it is very obvious that this physical existence is not ourself, right? So that is kind of like we don't have to go into that in a more detail. I think somewhere we already know that is the first aggregates. And then second aggregates that Buddha actually talk about is called the Sorwe Pungpo. Sorwa means, you know, kind of like a sense, right? Sense. So it is like another layer of sort of like what we feel, right? What we feel. So it is kind of like so there is like a whole another layer of us which is not physical, but there is like a lot of feeling, right? It's kind of like a feelings, like so all the sort of like emotions, right? What we feel like when we actually kind of like interact with something, and then we have so many different feelings. So that is like another layer. So that is like out of 5 aggregates, that is kind of like another part of us, another aspect of us. So then similarly, like that is also like when we are like it is like when we are aware of like our body and our feeling. So it is also obvious that our feeling is also part of us, but it is not us, because we are actually observing it. We are, we are kind of like we are experiencing it. So somehow it is like it's the feeling is the experience, but not the experiencer, right? So that is also clearly kind of like saying that it is also not myself. So it is part of me. And then we go another layer, which is called the like the layer of all these different notion, different ideas. So it is like from the Tibetan word, it is called like dushe pungbo. Dusheba means kind of like this is this, like so kind of like when we see the tree, and then immediately like we have some sort of like a thought, oh, this is a so-called tree, and this is so kind of like so there is like many ideas and thoughts, right? Many different kind of label, like the label that we give from our kind of like kind of in our mental dialogue, right? So that is so somehow, so this sort of inner voice or mental sort of like mental forming, sort of like it is like some sort of like all these different thoughts. So that is also obvious that we can actually sense, right? We can sense that, okay, I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. So we actually, when we look at our thoughts, also it shows that it is an object. It's just a part of us. It is actually we are not our thoughts. So kind of like that is a little bit difficult, because many people think I am who I think I am. Sort of like many times we kind of identify ourselves as who I think. So that there's kind of like we have a very solid idea of who am I, right? So there is kind of like we have a lot of stories that build about ourselves, sort of like I am this, I am that, sort of like so there is like a lot of conception, right? Idea or the mental story, and so that is like if we look at it, then that is also kind of like when we are somehow we know that we can be aware of our thoughts, because when we are having some sort of like a mental dialogue, we can hear ourselves, right? It is just like, okay, I'm talking kind of like a nonsense in my mind, like I'm thinking this, I'm thinking that. So we are actually, we can be aware of our thought as an object, right? So it is like it is there, so it is not the subject. Then kind of like we go into the fourth layer, which is kind of like a mental formation function. So there is like another, like the fourth sort of like all the karma, all the actions, all the, sort of like a force. So there is like a force kind of like behind our thought, right? Force behind our thought, force behind our feeling, force behind our physical and like a physical action. So that is there is another reality of us. Again, that is also kind of, we can actually objectify it, right? It's like, okay, this is kind of like, this is my force. So I am sort of, I am not that force, but I have that force. So that is sort of like a fourth aggregate. So ZaChoeje in Tibetan we say ZaChoeje Pungpo. Then the last aggregate, which is called the Namshege Pungpo, which is means Nambarshebe Pungpo, which is the consciousness, right? So the consciousness, so somehow is the one, the source of all this. So it is the source of our force or energy, and it is also kind of like all the thoughts are also coming from there, and then somehow feelings are also coming from there, and then the physical kind of like is also kind of like coming from there, because it is somehow consciousness is the one that sits at the source level. So then, like when we actually kind of like come to this understanding, the consciousness, then consciousness, how does the consciousness actually see? So it is kind of like a pretty kind of like, I would say it is pretty easy to understand how our consciousness actually see, right, all the object, right? Consciousness can actually sort of like see. But then when we actually come to, so then this question about the consciousness, is that an object or observer, right? Is it an observer? So consciousness is actually observed by itself or not? So then that actually becomes a little complicated question, right? It is kind of like so somehow, consciousness, sort of like the simple answer, how does the consciousness, how does, you see yourself, right? That is kind of like the big question. How can I see myself? So that is kind of like we actually use, right? So somehow consciousness is also part of us, but it is not us. So that is like from a highest Buddhist sort of like understanding point of view. Then actually they came to this level that even the consciousness is the kind of like is the one that is actually witnessing everything, but consciousness itself is not the self. So is there something beyond our consciousness that is observing, right? That is observing consciousness. Then if the answer is yes, then there should be something beyond consciousness, right? There is something beyond consciousness, there's something else. And then that is clearly, actually Buddha actually said that there is kind of like when you go beyond consciousness, then we don't find any any aspect of us, right? There's no any aspect of us. So that is why, so how does the consciousness actually see? So the consciousness sees in a very interesting way. It is like we are always familiar when we say like I see, right? When I look at it, I see something. Or when I was watching this, then I see this. And so like when we actually use the word observe, watching, seeing, looking, so everything kind of like something we actually translate that from how actually we see with our eyes, right? It's like we see with our eyes, and how our eyes see, like when our eye actually focus on something, when our eyes actually looked at something, then we see, right? So that is why our kind of like our conscious eye consciousness, right? This eye has a very limitation. So it is actually, it doesn't see itself, right? It doesn't see itself. Like for example, when you are actually looking at a flower, when you're looking at the flower, your eyes is actually seeing the flower. Do you see does your eye see your eyes or not? So that is very clear, right? It doesn't see. So because our understanding is that much that then we cannot actually understand, okay, so then how does my mind actually see itself? So that is actually totally different, because our eyes has a capability actually to see only sort of like a certain degree, right? It is like it is on like a, there's a limitation, so only on certain degree that we can see. But when it comes to consciousness, so the consciousness actually has a ability to see something from within and without. So it is like if I give you some simple example, it is just like the consciousness actually has a potential or capability to see things 360 degree horizontally and also 360 degree vertically, right? 360 degree vertically, horizontally. So that is a kind of like our consciousness has that capability. So like how our actually mind or our consciousness see things is very different from how we see with our own eyes. So it is actually like it sees by witnessing it. So it is like our like a kind of like when we actually kind of like when our mind actually become aware of how kind of like we are thinking, like what like all this thought comes in our mind, then our mind actually witness them. So in a way, it is kind of like a seeing by witnessing it, right? So that is why like this question of how mind, right? How does mind see things, right? The mind see things in a different way. So that is why like when we say, I see this, I hear this, so like also like the sound, right? When we actually hear like so sound, and then we kind of like this, there are actually, when it comes to the consciousness is not only the mental consciousness. So there is like eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, right? And then tongue consciousness, and then physical, body sensing consciousness. So these are all kind of like a, what do you call, five consciousness that is rely on five physical senses, right? So our eye consciousness only actually kind of like use our eye senses, and then kind of like whatever object that is reflected onto our eyes, and then our eye consciousness actually sort of like grab this. And then same thing, our ear consciousness too, right? Ear consciousness use the ear sense, right? It use the ear sense, and then when there's a sound that actually kind of like comes, right? When the sound actually the reflection or the like a danye, so this kind of like the sound, when it comes near our ear consciousness, then it catches, and then somehow our ear consciousness actually grab that sound. And similar with the smell, right? Using like this nose consciousness actually using the nose sense, and then tongue consciousness using the tongue sense, and then our bodies, like body consciousness actually use the body sense. But then when it comes to understanding what is a sense, then it is like there is a lot of kind of like a research that is done in many Buddhist texts, ancient Buddhist texts, especially there is one great scholar like Vasubandhu, great master Vasubandhu, and Asanga, and also Nagarjuna, and many great Indian masters in the ancient time actually did a lot of kind of like research on what is the sense, right? For example, when it comes to eye sense, so this eye sense, this whatever we see, that is we call it wangte kopa. So it is just like it's just a shell. It is just a shell, but it is not the sense. So the eye sense is something that is kind of like behind this. Then there is one phenomena that is sometimes we actually recognize that as it is sometimes we say it is a physical, sometimes it is it is very subtle, right? The Wangbo is very subtle, and then like when they actually come to this research, it is like they say that it is actually you cannot see it with our naked eye or something. So the real eye sense, so whatever we are actually seeing from the outside, even with the microscope, what we see is not the eye sense. The real eye sense is subtle. It is a very subtle physical form, which is actually not a mind, but it is in between. It is in between. This kind of like this. So there's a lot of what do you call kind of research that they did. So that is why they sometimes, when we use the term, like we say chi-su, nangisu, sort of like a chinanigesu, sort of like there is like a outer, outer form, inner form, and then like a, outer, inner, like a both, kind of like a part of both forms, sort of. So when we actually recognize the both one, we say the sense. The outer one is just the physical outer one. The inner one is just the shell of our eye sense, which is not the eye sense. So then there's more deeper, there's a sort of like another kind of real sense, which is like the kind of transparent, some kind of transparent, it is, so it is kind of like, I don't know, maybe we don't have to go into that. So that is like a little bit, so I don't, like, they did a lot of research. So anyway, so when we comes to understanding the eye consciousness, so the eye consciousness is a physical, right? Like it is the consciousness, it is a consciousness, but it is relied on eye sense. So kind of like for example, when we, when we actually look at, right, when we look at, so say like you are looking at some painting. So this painting has so many things, right? So in this painting, in that canvas painting, and then that painting has like a mountain, waterfall, and then like some flowers and trees and many different animals, and so then there's like a lot of things. Just imagine you are actually looking at this one beautiful painting, canvas painting, and so when you look at it first, like when you look at this whole painting, so immediately the whole image in that painting, somehow our eyes, actually it is all reflected, right? It is all reflected in our eye consciousness, our eye senses. So whatever it is reflected, then somehow our eye consciousness took it takes a snapshot of it, right? It takes a snapshot, but then how do we know? The question is, when we actually look at just one painting, our eye sense actually take all the image in kind of like as a snapshot, and then our eye consciousness actually took it everything, right? It's just like it took it everything, but then somewhere did we see everything or not, right? Like we look at the image, right? We look at image with our eye consciousness using eye senses. So our eye consciousness actually looked at it, and then the question is, did we see it? Did our eye consciousness actually sees it? So that is actually a big question. So did we see it? Some, when it comes to the debate, then sometimes, we say, yes, we actually see it. Then if we see it, does that mean that we actually recognize it or not? So to be able to recognize that, so it is it depends on our mind, right? Mental consciousness. So then, like a mental consciousness, recognize, right? Mental consciousness, if you just look at one, one painting, and then you just turn around, and then if I ask you, did you see there was one small deer in that painting, and then what will you remember? So if you have seen it, then you must have remembered it. So, but then it is like, oh, I'm not sure, but I might have seen it, but then I don't recollect. So I don't know that. So you are not aware that you see, but something that you see, but you are not aware that you are seeing, right? So that when it comes to that awareness, so then mental consciousness plays a very important role right here. So this is like, did you see it or not? So mostly we say, I don't see it. Why? Because I was not aware of it, right? So to be aware of it, then you have to have that mental consciousness actually sort of like whatever, the image that, the snapshot that whatever your eyes consciousness has taken, so somehow it doesn't leave some kind of impression to your mental consciousness. So that is why you don't have an awareness. So then so if we look at this process, right? So there is a kind of it's interesting when we are seeing sort of how we are aware. Like for example, there is an object, right? So the object is the painting, right? And then like, so there is a kind of like a, what do you call? There is a property, right? So there is a property of the object. So there's a property of the object is like the detail, right? The detailedness. So the detailedness of that object. And then, you know, like the event, right? So there is kind of like the event is a narration, right? The narration. So the narration between your, you know, mental consciousness and the eye consciousness somehow, like, so there is like an event. So there, to be aware of something. So all these three somehow needed to be present there. So that is why, kind of like when it comes to being aware, how does our mind aware? How does our mind actually sees it? So whatever you actually, your eyes consciousness sees, does this all record to our mental consciousness? Are we being aware of it or not? So that is actually a big question. So somehow, like maybe we are aware of it, but we actually, it is, you know, it is our focus is not so much to that maybe it doesn't leave any impression, right? It doesn't leave any impression on our mental consciousness. Then somehow it actually goes like we have never seen it, right? We have never seen it. So anyway, so that is kind of like when it comes to how our mind, right, mind see the like a different thoughts. So mind see the different thoughts. So it's kind of like the mind is like the sky. Okay, mind is like the sky, and then thoughts are like the cloud. So thoughts are like the cloud. Thoughts and emotions and all the event that is taking place is all like the clouds. So it is kind of like the you know, mind actually witness everything. So mind witness everything. So it doesn't, you know, have to. You don't have to go beyond your mind, right? Out of your mind to be aware of your mind. So somehow when your mind witness, you know, your thoughts, when your mind witness your emotion, so that is what it called, like the mind actually sees the events that take place in our mind. So that is why it is kind of like this question about how our mind see ourselves, how our consciousness actually see ourselves is a very kind of deep-rooted question on who am I. So this kind of like who am I, this kind of like I saw somewhere that the great Indian master Maharishi, right? Ramana Maharishi actually used to say that you have to, you know, ask this question to yourself: who am I? And that is the, you know, when you actually observe, when you actually analyze, like asking this "who am I" is the, what do you call, the like the, you actually learn. You can learn many things when we ask this question. But generally, like when we actually go and meet someone, like sort of like if someone asks you, "Who are you?" then mostly kind of like we kind of like say our name, right? Oh, I'm so and so. So, and then that is it. So we don't actually go beyond that. And then the person who asks you actually satisfied with that, and you know, we are also kind of, we go with it, sort of like, so that is it. But in reality, that is the deepest question, right? So if we actually analyze it, like when someone asks you, "Who are you?" and then you say, you know, your name, I am, you know, I'm this, I'm, you know, then in reality, then before, right? Before you had this name, you know, like you exist before you had that name, right? Your name was given after you were born, so you exist actually before you were born. Like so, maybe I don't know. So that is kind of like if we really look into it, that is just like it is not who you are. It is what you call. It is your label. It is your name, right? But like we have so much attached to like somehow we think that my name is me and I'm my name. So somehow we get so attached to that, like then we become our name and something like that. But then like kind of like once we know that, okay, so just kind of it is just my label, it is just my name, then who are you really? Who are you? Then like if somebody insists you the question, then you will say, well, okay, that's I understand, my name is just my label. Then who am I is then you start telling that I was born in this year and my parents' name is this, and then I went to this school, and then I after that I work in this place, and then like all kind of like you went through, then just saying, okay, this is who I am. And then it is just like I just asked you, who are you? I didn't ask you your story. You're just telling me your story. So your story, of course, it is not you, right? So then it's just like, well, okay, now I understand. So your question, so who am I? And then this, like deep inside, I think, right? There is a kind of like so there is like some, this Western, what do you call, Descartes, right? Also say, I think that's what, I think that is what I am, something like that, he said something like that. So when it comes to, that also, then many times we actually think, okay, so there is this something beyond that, that who am, like there is a thinker, so this thinker is like who I am, then we are actually grabbing on that like idea. So it is somehow we are saying that I am who I think I am, sort of like it. So that is also not who we are, right? So that is why if we actually go deep into understanding the consciousness, then actually we will come to, from the Buddha's point of view, then Buddha actually said that, actually, it is like a, I am just sort of like imputed to my 5 aggregates. So I am not separated from 5 aggregates. So because 5 aggregates are part of me, and so then it is kind of like then the question comes, then are you the owner, right? Are you the owner of this so 5 aggregates? Then again, it is like no, I'm not the owner. I am not the owner of this. But then it is just kind of like it is just imputed, right? Ngatsam. So it is like a merely, kind of self that is just sort of like, what do you call it? It's just projected. So like that is a little bit kind of like coming to a very deep answer of who am I. Because sometimes when we actually go into that question of who am I, then some people actually philosophically go deep into that, and they actually thinking that, okay, I'm, when I search for who am I don't find it, that means I don't exist. Then that is kind of like falling into nihilistic view. So that is also not kind of like, if we actually start kind of coming to this kind of like, what do you call, conclusion, saying that whatever it is, I don't exist, then that is actually a very big abyss of nihilism. So nihilism is also a very dangerous place. So we have to be careful not to fall into nihilism. And then if we actually start kind of grasping on all these things that physical self, mental self, emotional self, kind of like energetical self, and then even if we kind of grab on the consciousness, then that is also going into the extremist. So there is something in between. So like once we actually understand how consciousness sees everything, how consciousness witnesses everything, then we actually come to understand, we come to understand this answer of who am I. So that is why I think this question of how consciousness sees things is very related to the answer or the question of who am I. All right? So just today, I thought that maybe we will kind of like discuss that. And so that is just our today, some, shedding lights on how mind sees, how consciousness sees consciousness. But then it is also terminally, it is also not a right way to say consciousness say itself, because in the Prasangika, there is they don't actually they actually disputed these thoughts on Rangri. Rangri means mind seeing itself, sort of like so it is kind of like there are some Buddhist school actually like a mind only school, like they actually say everything is everything is part of consciousness, it is within the frame of consciousness. Then the Prasangika asks this question, okay, if everything is it's just the appearance of consciousness, then who sees the consciousness? Then they actually have to come with this conclusion saying that, okay, consciousness is seen by, there is another mind within the mind that sees the consciousness. Then, there are so many kind of like negation that is done by great master, what do you call, Chandrakirti, and those are actually very, real fact. Sort of like he also says that if mind sees itself, if there is one part of, if the mind sees the mind, then light should make the light clear. So if the light makes the light clear, then the light will not make the darkness clear. So that actually kind of think about that. That's actually very, very powerful. What do you call logic that he used. So there are actually many things that kind of like this question of how mind sees everything is a very big question. All right. Anyway, so today I think this much. So I don't want to make a lot of complicating kind of topic here. All right. So here on my screen, I see. So today, actually, can you hear my voice actually better or not? Okay. So I think I'm using this earphone and the mic both. So hopefully this sound is getting better. Anyway, so here on our Wednesday gathering, I see some people here. So the first one actually showing here, Sonia Ondish Tashidelek. So if I will scroll down and see if there is any question, then I will answer your questions. And then other than that, just I will send my Tashidelek to all of you. So Andrew Wall, Tashidelek, Don King, Tashidelek, and Janet Campbell, you're saying Tashidelek Rinpoche, Tashidelek, Mary Kay Moses, Tashidelek, and Parwa, Barwa Musher, Tashidelek, dear Rinpoche, Tashidelek, thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. Many blessings to you. Thank you. And Mona Zens, Tashidelek, Mona. And then I see Lobsang Mudu, Tashidelek, Lobsang Targiela, Tashidelek, Sapna Tiwari, Tashidelek, John Gosset, Tashidelek, and Lobsang Chumbel, Tashidelek. Kyesan Gindu, thank you, Rinpoche, you're welcome. Kyesan Gindu, Tashidele. Sere Tokewa, Tashidele. And Siring Chunzumla, Tashidele. Jitka Marigold, thank you, Rinpoche, you're welcome. And then Alex, you're saying something. Rinpoche, you talk about White Tara as existing in the same time and space as our bodily self, but in a different dimension or at a different vibration. Would you say that our consciousness, whether gross or subtle, is part of that same time and space as White Tara? So that it is a White Tara consciousness at the same time it is our ego consciousness. Thank you. Actually, yes, so it is kind of like when we actually say the White Tara nature. So think of the Buddha nature, right? The Buddha nature, it is kind of like our consciousness actually has that potential, right? So Sanjay Rik means kind of like a potential, or kind of like this, somehow, if you look at that, the nature as a potential, then say, for example, if you look at one small seed of an apple, so that seed of an apple actually has a, kind of the apple fruit, to grow into an apple tree and an apple fruit. It has the potential. So it is actually carrying the nature of apple inside there, right? Same thing, our consciousness also carries the enlightened nature. So White Tara is one, right? It is just like like for example, Cheresi, right? Avalokiteshvara is the compassionate nature, right? The compassionate aspect of the enlightenment. So kind of like if we have a Buddha nature, enlightened nature, so the enlightenment nature actually has many different qualities, right? So White Tara is a Sangye Thamjige Tile Rangsu. Tile means activity, right? The activities of the enlightened. So enlightened activity, that nature, that part of Buddha nature is within our consciousness. So somehow, yes, that is within that consciousness. So whether it is a gross or subtle, so within the consciousness, in that same kind of like a time and space, but in a different kind of like what do you call it? It is in a different dimension. So it is kind of like I looked at that way. So I think maybe so it like when it says time and space, it become very kind of like a little bit confusing. What is time, right? What is time? Like the past, present, and future. Really, is there a past? So is there a future? So past, present, and future, maybe it's just in our idea, right? It's just a mental conception. It is only exist in our so maybe in reality, it is always present. So that is kind of like a little bit difficult to actually explain, all right, Alex? And then I see here Bawa Tupden, La Tashidelek, and Tupden Chuing laughing, ha ha ha, thank you. Maybe it's a good thing. So Tina Watsky, Tashidelek. And Mona Zens, as long as we are on one breath, it will be done. Yes, that is true. And then Kyesan Gindu Tashidele again. Tashidele and thank you, Rinpoche. Jesse Singh, Tashidele. Miyuki Onozawa Watanabe, thank you so much, Rinpoche. You're welcome. From Ernie, thank you so much. It was wonderful. Yes, I hope Ernie, I think you also one of the person who asked this question, right? So I hope that this answers your question. And then Regula Stewart Tashidele Rinpoche from Regula, Tashidele Regula. We are so lucky how you can make complicated things clear. I hope so. You're welcome. And then Ninju Kumaran saying prostration to Guru Deva Master. Thank you, Tashidele. Thank you for explaining how everything at the relative level, from physical sense to feeling and thoughts, its source is consciousness empowered by karma. Master, is the fifth aggregate, then a fifth aggregate is the consciousness, transparent portal to the underlying absolute. In India, we say that the compassionate and selfless Guru comes as a door and portal to the absolute, to indisputable strengthening our faith in underlying absolute. And by Guru's blessing, Kripa, the grace, the connect understanding of Guru's teaching, Gyan, take you safely beyond samsara. As you have repeatedly taught us, Master, we just need to keep the vessel of our mind clean and pure, fully open and fully available, intact, without any cracks or leaks. Namo Namaha Jai Guru. Yes, that is true. Thank you for the comment. And then Luen, I see Luen Tashidelek. So I think, so that is so far, everybody here. And anyway, so this is our Wednesday, just we are casually meeting, and I try to bring, like if there is some question, I try to answer as much as I know, and and you are just asking what I am thinking, what I understand, and whatever I am saying not necessarily need to be true. So I am just throwing here for your kind of like to analyze it. Just kind of like one of the things, our mind, we have a capability to analyze, right? And like Buddha himself, actually, he said that whatever all the teaching that he has given, you don't have to believe everything what Buddha said. Sort of like you should analyze it, you should examine it, and so some of the things here. What I am actually saying is not necessarily fact. It doesn't have to be fact. So some of the things that I study, I understand. So I'm just telling what I understand. And if that is, if it is not correct from your point of view, then, it is your choice. And just kind of like in Tibetan, we say, listen from one ear and throw from another ear, just let go. So, we don't have to, kind of like, you don't have to take. So, and somehow I believe that you are actually coming here, listening is because maybe you are thinking that you will learn something. So, here I'm just, whatever I explain, it is out of my pure intention, and so I think just kind of like don't have to don't have to believe, and also there is no point of argument, because here I'm not trying to prove myself right, and if it is wrong from your point of view, then yes, it is wrong. I am wrong for you, and that is okay. It doesn't affect me. And so if it is whatever I'm saying here, if it is not necessary, then just throw it. All right, don't keep it. And then I see some more Sally Valley, Tashi Delek Sally, and Janet Campbell saying thank you for teaching. The sound is much better. Okay, that is good. And then Zephy, Tashi Delek Zephy. Okay, so I think So today this much, and then hopefully see you next week. All right, touch the leg.